Grimm's Fairy Tales. Reading the story, The True Bride. Quite interesting. There was once a young and a beautiful maiden. She had lost her mother when a child. The story goes on like this. Okay. And her stepmother did everything she could do to make her life a burden. When she gave her any work, however difficult it might be, the girl went at it untiringly and did as much as was in her power. That she was unable to touch the wicked woman's heart in this way, she was never satisfied and always found the girl had not done enough. In fact, the harder she worked, the more she was given to do, and the only way she got thanked was by being burdened with heavier loads, and her life being made utterly miserable. So this is how it was. One day her stepmother said to her, "There are 12 pounds of feathers for you to pluck, and if you have not finished by this evening, you may expect a good beating." Do you imagine? You can sit idle all day? The poor girl set to work, but the tears poured down her cheeks, for she saw it was impossible for her to finish the work in a day. If in her distress she sighed or wrung her hands together when a little pile of feathers were lying before her, they flew apart and she had to pick them up again and start afresh. At last she put her elbows on the table and her face in her hands and cried out, "Is there no one on God's earth to have pity on me?" Whereupon she heard a soft voice saying, "Be comforted, my child, I have come to help you." The girl looked up and saw an old woman standing by her side. She took the girl kindly by the hand and said, "Confide your troubles in me." So that's what she said. The girl, She spoke so gently that the girl told her all about her sad life and explained how burden upon burden was laid upon her and how impossible it was for her to get through her present work. "If I have not done these feathers by the evening, my stepmother will beat me. She has threatened me with it, and she always keeps her word." The girl began to cry again, but the old woman said, "Never mind, child, go and rest yourself, and in the meantime I will do your work for you." The girl lay down on her bed and was soon fast asleep. The old woman sat down at the table with the feathers, and oh, how they flew off the quills, which she scarcely touched with her hard hands. She soon finished the 12 pounds. When the girl awoke, large snow-white heaps of feathers were lying piled up and the room was cleanly swept out, and the old woman had vanished. The girl thanked God and remained quiet until evening. When her stepmother came in, she was simply astonished to find the work completed. "You see, you lazy thing," she said. "What can be done if one is diligent? Could you not have found something else to do instead of sitting there with your hands in your lap?" As she was leaving the room, she said to herself, "That creature is worth more than her salt. I must give her some harder work to do." So that's what she thought. The next morning, she called the girl and said, "Here is a spoon. Go and clear out the big pond at the bottom of the garden with it. And if you have not finished by the evening, you know what will follow." The girl took the spoon and saw that it had a hole in it. But even this had not been the case. She could not have emptied the pond with it. However, she set to work at once, and kneeling beside the water into which her tears fell, began to bail. But the good old woman appeared again, and when she learned the cause of the girl's distress, said, "Be confronted, my child. Go and sleep in the bushes, and I will do your work for you." When she was alone, the old woman merely touched the water, and it began to rise into the air like vapor and mingle with the clouds. Gradually, the pond became empty, and when at sunset the girl awoke, there was nothing to be seen but the fishes flapping in the mud. She went to the stepmother and showed her that the work was completed. "You must have finished long ago," she said, turning white with rage, and already beginning to turn over in her mind that she would now give her what she could now give the girl to do. The third morning she said to her, "You are to build a beautiful castle for me on that piece of level ground over there, and it must be ready by this evening." The poor girl was utterly dismayed and said, "How could I execute such a great piece of work?" "I will stand no contradiction," screamed her stepmother. "If you can empty out a pond with a spoon with a hole in it, you can build a castle. I shall take up my abode there today, and if there is anything missing, even if it be the most trifling thing in the kitchen or cellar, you know what to expect." And she drove the girl away. When the latter reached the valley, she found rocks piled up one against the other. Using all her strength, she could not even move the smallest of them. So it was that bad. So she sat down and began to cry, her one hope lying in the appearance of the old woman, who did not keep her waiting long, but came and confronted her by saying, "Just lie down and sleep in the shade, and I will build your castle for you, and if it pleases you, you shall live in it yourself." When the girl was gone, the old woman touched the grey rocks. Immediately they began to move towards each other and stood side by side as if a giant had built the wall. Then the building began to form, and it was just as if innumerable unseen hands were working and laying stone upon stone. The earth groaned, and great pillars arose and arranged themselves in order. The tiles placed themselves neatly on the roof, and at midday a weathercock like a golden virgin with flying garments was turning on the top of the tower. The inside of the castle was completed by the evening. How the old woman managed it, I really do not know. But the walls of the rooms were hung with silk and velvet. Richly upholstered chairs were standing about. Handsomely carved armchairs were placed in front of marble tables, and crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling and were reflected in the polished floor. Rain parrots and beautiful singing birds were swinging in golden cages, and everywhere was splendor worthy of a king. The sun was just setting when the girl awoke and found thousands of lights flashing in her eyes. She got up quickly and then ran into the castle to the open door. The steps were covered with red cloth, and the golden railings garnished with flowering trees. When she beheld the splendor of the room, she stood still, absolutely stupefied. Who knows how long she would have remained so if she had not suddenly remembered her stepmother. Ah, she said to herself, if only she could be satisfied at last and not frighten me out of my wits any longer. So the maiden went and told her mother that the castle was ready. I will go and inhabit it at once, she said, getting up from her seat. When she entered the castle, she had to put her hands before her eyes. The brilliancy dazzled her soul. You see, she said to the girl, how easily you can do everything. I ought to have given you something more difficult. She went through all the rooms and poked into every corner to see if anything were missing or wrong, but could find nothing. Now we will go below, she said, casting a look of hatred at the girl. The kitchen and cellars have yet to be looked through, and if you have forgotten anything, you shall not escape your punishment. So she was there to, her only aim was to punish the girl. But the fire was burning on the hearth, and the supper cooking in the pots. The shovel and tongs were in their place, a row of shining kitchen utensils arranged against the wall. Nothing was missing, even the coal box or the water pail. Where is the entrance to the cellar? She cried. If it is not well filled with wine, it will be a bad thing for you. She lifted up the trapdoor herself and went down the steps, but she had scarcely taken 2 steps before the heavy trapdoor, which was only tilted back, fell on her. The girl heard a cry and quickly lifted the trapdoor to help her, but it had knocked her down and she lay lifeless at the bottom. Now the beautiful castle belonged to the girl alone. At first she did not know what to do. She was so happy. The cupboards were filled with beautiful clothes, and some of the drawers with gold and silver, and others with pearls and precious stones. In fact, she had everything she wanted. Soon the renown of the girl's beauty and riches went throughout the world. Suitors presented themselves daily, but none pleased her. At last a king's son came, and he succumbed he succeeded in winning her heart, and they were engaged. In the castle garden was a lime tree under which the lovers were one day sitting happily together when he said to her, "I must go home and get my father's permission for our marriage. I beseech you to wait for me here under this tree, and I shall be back in a few hours." The girl kissed him on his left cheek and said, "Keep true to me and don't let anyone kiss you on this cheek. I will wait for you under the lime tree." She sat on under the lime tree until sunset, but he had not returned. She sat there for 3 entire days and waited for him, but in vain. When he did not appear on the 4th day, she said, "Something most certainly must have happened to him. I will go and look for him and not come back until I have found him." She packed on her 3 prettiest dresses, one covered with shining stars, the second with silver moons, and the third with golden suns, and also a handful of precious stones, and set out. Everywhere she went, she inquired about her lover, but no one had either seen or heard of him. She wandered far and wide over the world, but could not find him. At last, she hired herself into a farmer as a shepherdess, and hid her dresses and precious stones under a large rock. She now lived as a shepherdess, and while tending her sheep, was very sad, longing for her beloved. She had a little calf which grew quite tame and used to eat out of her hand. And when she said, "Kneel down, little calf, by my side, come closer unto me, be not as the prince who forgot his bride under the old lime tree." The calf knelt down and let her stroke it. After having thus spent two sad and lonely years, the news that the king's daughter was going to be married was spread over the land. The road to the town passed through the village where the maiden was living, and it happened that once while she was tending her sheep, the bridegroom passed by. He sat proudly on his horse and did not look near her, but she saw him and recognized him. She felt as if a sharp knife were cutting her heart. "Ah," she sighed, "I thought he would have remained true to me, but he has forgotten." Another day he passed along the road. When he came near, she said to the calf, "Kneel down, little calf, by my side. Come closer unto me. Be not as the prince who forgot his bride under the old lime tree." When he heard the voice, he looked round and reined in his horse. He looked at the shepherdess in the face and put his hands to his eyes as if he wanted to remember something. Then he rode out farther and soon disappeared. "Alas," she cried, "he does not know me any longer," and she was sadder than ever. Soon afterwards, the whole country was invited to a 3 days feast given by the king at his court. "Now," thought she, "I will try my last chance." When evening came, she went to the rock, took out the dress covered with golden suns, put it on, and adorned herself with precious stones. She unbound her hair, which she had been wearing concealed under her handkerchief, and let her long curls fall down her back. She then went to the town, and as it was dark, no one noticed her. At her appearance in the brilliantly lighted hall, everybody stared in astonishment. but nobody knew who she was. The prince went forward to meet her, but still he did not recognize her. He danced with her and was so charmed with her beauty that he scarcely gave the other bride a thought. When the fete was over, she disappeared in the crowd and was back in the village before break of day, clad once more in a shepherdess dress. The next evening she wore her dress with the moons and put a crescent moon of precious stone in her hair. When she appeared at the banquet, everyone turned to gaze at her, but the king's son hastened towards her, danced with her the whole evening, and would not look at anyone else. Before she went away, he made her promise that she would come again the next evening. When she appeared the third evening, she was wearing the star dress, which shimmered and glittered at every step she took, and in her hair and round her waist were stars of precious stones. The prince had been waiting for her a long time and managed to press his way towards her. When he reached her, he said, "Now, do tell me who you are. It seems to me I've known you for a long time. Don't you remember what I did when we parted?" She answered, and stepping up to him, kissed his left cheek. At that moment, scales seemed to fall from his eyes, and he recognized his true bride. "Come away," he said. "I cannot stay here any longer," and seizing her hand, he led her to the carriage. The horses seemed to fly like the wind to the magic castle, and they could see the illuminated windows shining from afar. On passing the lime tree, it shook the branches and sent a sweet fragrance into the air. Underneath it were an innumerable quantity of glowworms. Flowers adorned the steps, and the song of the birds echoed in the rooms. But in the whole court had assembled, and a priest was there waiting to unite the bridegroom to his true bride. So that was another fairy tale, The True Bride.